Me Too for the Family System, Dysfunctional Families and Chosen Ones Legal. Welcome back. I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and this is the Parental Abuse and Alienation in Spiritual Warfare series, where we strip silence of its power, reclaim the record, and expose the generational systems that have hidden spiritual abuse under the mask of family. There is a movement rising not just in whispers or private conversations, but in public testimony. It's happening in the open now, not in a therapist's office, not behind closed doors, but on podcasts, in courtrooms, across TikTok, and deep inside the comment sections of viral posts. A wave of survivors are no longer hiding. And the thing they are naming isn't just childhood trauma. It's the family system itself as a system of spiritual, emotional, and psychological control that has operated without accountability for generations. This is not just healing. This is a revolution of truth. A global civil uprising of survivors who will no longer protect the image of the abuser. And this movement has a name: Me Too for the family system. For far too long, family abuse, especially parental abuse, has existed in a protected zone. In society, the phrase family matters has become code for don't get involved. Culture has taught us that to question your family is betrayal. That loyalty means silence. That love means compliance. That speaking up is disrespectful. That every family has problems is reason enough to stay quiet, endure, and keep the peace no matter how deep the harm goes. But that illusion is breaking. And the shattering isn't quiet. Thanks to the courage of survivors and the reach of social media, we are watching one of the most spiritually significant cultural shifts of our time. People from all walks of life, women, men, queer individuals, neurodivergent voices, immigrants, religious escapees, and cycle breakers of every kind are standing up and telling the truth. And every time one person tells their story, another finds the courage to speak. That's how civil movements gain traction. That's how silence becomes a crowd. That's how a spark becomes a wildfire. To understand the gravity of what's happening, we must look beyond the personal. Yes, your story is personal. Yes, your pain is intimate. But what you experienced was never just about you. Parental abuse and family trauma are part of a systemic, intergenerational design to suppress spiritual power, create emotional confusion, and pass down dysfunction under the guise of tradition. These dynamics were not accidents. They were inherited scripts designed to protect the abuser, shame the victim, and gaslight anyone who dared to ask questions. And for centuries, this script went unchallenged, especially when the abuser was a parent. Unlike other forms of abuse, parental abuse is rarely believed, even when it's obvious. Why? Because it challenges the deepest cultural myth we have: the sanctity of the family unit. But what if the family wasn't sacred? What if it was weaponized? What if the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who programmed you to stay small, doubt yourself, and stay silent? That is the core of this movement, and why it mirrors every major civil rights and truth uprising of the last century. When the Me Too movement erupted, it wasn't because women just started being abused. It's because a collective agreement of silence was broken. It was because survivors saw other survivors speaking and realized they weren't alone. Suddenly, the things they thought were isolated, the abuse, the gaslighting, the retaliation, the shame, were revealed to be patterned, systemic, and culturally reinforced. Now the same pattern is happening around parental abuse, and it is no less radical. Because for the first time in mainstream visibility, people are naming their mothers as abusers, naming their fathers as narcissists, speaking about sibling triangulation, false narratives, spiritual abuse, weaponized religion, custody manipulation, and intergenerational trauma, not in private, but in public. Not behind locked doors, but on public platforms where millions can hear. And when that happens, when the private becomes public, it changes the narrative permanently. Every major civil movement followed this same arc. In the civil rights era, stories of police brutality were considered controversial. White Americans often denied they existed. But when photos, videos, and organized protests spread, people could no longer pretend it wasn't real. It wasn't just a few bad apples, it was a systemic rot. And the culture had to respond. The same happened in feminist movements. Before Me Too, women were told to tolerate sexual harassment. They were accused of asking for it, of being too sensitive. It took a wave of mass disclosure for the conversation to shift from isolated incidents to structural abuse. This is what's happening now with the family system. And it's not a trend, it's a tipping point. When thousands, soon millions of people start saying, I wasn't raised in a loving family, I was raised in a cult-like system of silence, fear, control, and abuse, it shifts the cultural lens. We begin to ask new questions. Not, did that really happen? But, how many others were silenced the same way? And that's what breaks the stronghold. Visibility breaks generational curses. Visibility breaks denial. Visibility brings light to the places that were once protected by shame and secrecy. But make no mistake, every movement that challenges systemic abuse is met with resistance. Survivors are already being accused of exaggerating, demonizing parents, or destroying family values. This is the same playbook used in every truth movement. When survivors speak up, the system doesn't say thank you. It tries to silence them again. But the power of this movement is that the resistance proves the need for revolution. Because if your story wasn't powerful, they wouldn't be trying to suppress it. If speaking out didn't matter, you wouldn't feel the fear. If telling the truth didn't shift something, the entire system wouldn't be panicking. And yes, it is a system. The family system doesn't exist in isolation. It's propped up by religious systems, legal systems, school systems, and cultural myths that insist parents are always right. Elders must be respected no matter what, and children owe their loyalty regardless of how they were treated. But when a generation of cycle breakers decides that love requires truth, not obedience, the system can no longer sustain itself. It begins to fall apart because its foundation was never built on truth in the first place. It was built on control disguised as care. And this is where your voice matters most. Every time you speak your story, whether through a post, a video, a book, a courtroom, or a quiet conversation, you chip away at that illusion. You declare that silence is no longer sacred. You refuse to play the role. You become what your ancestors never got to be, a living interruption of the pattern. You are not weak for speaking. You are not dramatic for remembering. You are not disloyal for naming it. You are a spiritual first responder, sounding the alarm so the next child doesn't have to carry what you carried. And let's talk about what makes this wave unstoppable. It's collective. No one person started it. No single organization controls it. It's not top-down. It's ground up. It's raw. It's messy. And that's why it's real. Because real healing isn't always clean. Real revolutions are chaotic. But they are righteous. This is grassroots soul work. It's the survivors banding together. It's the daughters who were scapegoated. The sons who were alienated. The queer kids who were spiritually abused. The children who were programmed to worship parents who never loved them unconditionally. We are finding each other. And when survivors find each other, we don't just trade stories, we build momentum. We begin to speak a shared language. We stop apologizing for the truth. And we start creating new paradigms. That's what makes this sacred. Because this isn't just venting. This isn't just trauma dumping. This is testifying. And testimony isn't just about memory. It's about declaring reality out loud in a way that shifts not just hearts, but structures. Let's be very clear. This movement isn't anti-family. It's anti-abuse. It's pro-truth. It's pro-child. It's pro-healing. It's pro-boundaries. It's for families rooted in real love, not performative loyalty. Because real family, divine family, doesn't silence your pain. It holds it. Real love doesn't demand your silence. It honors your truth. So if the system you were born into couldn't do that, it wasn't sacred. It was oppressive. And it is your spiritual right to walk away, to leave the table where you were only fed lies, to cut ties that were based on manipulation, to build a new family rooted in truth, choice, and mutual respect. To become the kind of parent, leader, friend, and cycle breaker that you never had. And that is what this movement is building. We're not just tearing down the old, we're constructing the new. Together. So what's your role? If you've lived through it, speak. If you're still healing, witness. If you've broken the cycle, teach. If you're just now realizing what happened, stay. You're not alone. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being present, showing up, refusing to disappear, refusing to stay silent while the next generation suffers. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be polished. You just have to be real. So here's your final message. You are not broken. You are the breaker of the system, and you are not alone. This movement is happening right now, with or without permission, with or without applause, with or without the support of the people who once made you doubt yourself. This is Me Too for the family system. It's your voice, it's our wave, and it's just getting started. Hi, I'm Adeline Atlas, 11 times published author, and what you just watched is part of my signature program, the Chosen One series inside School of Soul. This series is not just a course, it's a blueprint for those who know they were different from the start. The black sheep, the scapegoat, the truth teller, the cycle breaker. Inside, you'll discover the family roles playbook, the golden child, the scapegoat, the enabler, the lost child, and how to finally step out of the part you were cast in without consent. How the black sheep becomes the goat, turning rejection into radical transformation in leadership. How to break generational curses and rewrite ancestral contracts so the pain stops with you. And how to recognize and escape modern forms of spiritual and technological targeting, from gang stalking to synthetic synchronicity. This isn't just about survival. It's about awakening, about reclaiming your voice, your lineage, and your destiny as one of the chosen ones. Click the link below to access the full series now, because the role ends the moment you decide it does, and the real script begins with you.